If your team is missing deadlines, avoiding conversations, or quietly disengaging, you may not have a performance problem. You may have a communication problem. Here's the hard truth. Most communication breakdowns don't start with employees. It starts with leadership. Welcome to Shift School, where we talk about leadership and helping others. What are those small shifts that we need to make to grow our impact, to strengthen our leadership, and create meaningful change? Sometimes it's hard to hear, but really, if we truly have a heart to be a better leader, to really show up better in this world, and to make a better impact, small shifts are necessary. In today's episode, we're talking about communication and leadership, how to recognize the warning signs that your team is struggling, and how to identify the root issues, and what to do before poor communication damages trust, morale, and performance. Because communication isn't just something leaders do, communication is leadership. Have you ever been on a team where people stopped speaking up? Meetings became quiet, emails became short, deadlines started slipping, and slowly people disconnected. Most leaders assume it's a motivation issue, but often the real issue is communication. And as leaders, we may think that we are communicating well, but if we're starting to see these things show up in our employees or our team, we need to stop for a second and really think about that. Because we may communicate, but is it really communicating what needs to be said, what they're needing to hear, and what they need to know? So studies show that 86% of workplace failures are connected to poor communication. So when leaders fail to communicate clearly and effectively, teams begin filling the gaps with assumptions, frustrations, or even rumors. You may have been there before. When there was a lack of communication, there's this gap. And we start adding in what our brains tell us, maybe from past experiences, maybe from other things that are happening, or maybe someone else in the office starts, adding into it. So then if there's a gap, we fill that in with our own thoughts. And communication breakdowns don't always look loud. A lot of times it's silent. You may have heard the term recently called quiet quitting. Very common as people feel more and more disconnected and unable to communicate with leaders, they just start to kind of drift off in the quietness. And you wonder if they're still working or are they in their office? You haven't heard from them. Are they good? Are they okay? What do they need? So that's when, as leaders, we need to check back in. So here's some common leadership communication mistakes. Micromanagement instead of empowering. So we're seeing the work not getting done. So instead of empowering them to take ownership of it, now we have a task list. And how often do we need to check in? When do I need to check back with you? When are you going to have that done? Did you do this, this, this? There's this micromanaging piece instead of empowering them to take the opportunity to move forward on the project and addressing what needs to happen. Avoiding difficult conversations. This one is a very large topic. I don't know about you. Not very many people like to embrace a difficult conversation. Coming in and having that hard conversation really is vulnerable. It puts us in a place of flight, fright, freeze, maybe yelling, maybe confusion, maybe quiet, maybe what comes out when we're frustrated and angry is not what we want to portray. So we avoid the conversation and, oh, I'm just probably reading into it. It'll resolve on its own. This isn't about me. This isn't, but as a leader, it is your responsibility to have that conversation. in a meaningful way, not chastising, not getting after them, but having a conversation and opening that up, being there as a leader. What's happening? How can we make it better? And then taking that courage to have that conversation in those next steps. So, another communication mistake. So, we have micromanaging instead of empowering, avoiding difficult conversations, inconsistent feedback. I don't know about you. I'm a parent. I have noticed there are times that I am not consistent with my feedback. Since I have acknowledged it, I've grown leaps and bounds in that area, but it happens in our leadership as well. Lack of transparency. There's a hard place as a leader to be when you have others making decisions and then you are responsible for communicating those to your team. And you can't say everything. You can't tell them everything that's happening. So sometimes that gets just stuck in, I can't tell you, I can't talk about it. When that's not really truly the essence of leading. Leading them is letting them know what does need to happen. What are we going to be doing as a team? And how are we moving together and coming together as a team to, if it's a goal, hitting that goal? If it's a transition point, how do we get through that together as a team? Other times it's just not knowing we were being lack of transparency that we just didn't realize as a leader that we didn't fully communicate. And so when there's a lack of transparency, you've all been there, maybe not all of you. I know a lot of people when something is being told and you're like, I think there's more to that story. There's something missing. There's this assumption like, if you're not telling me this, what else aren't you telling me? And so, as a leader, it's very important that we communicate clearly, don't give room for assumptions, and communicate what needs to be communicated. And most of the time, all of the time, it is a teamwork. How do we come together as a team? Another one, failing to connect relationally with people. When we look at teams, we need to be able to work together. And if we don't have a relationship with people, if we don't have a trust relationship built in, that doesn't mean we're best friends and we go out to dinner all the time. What that means is I am who I say I am. I follow through on what I say I'm going to follow through on, and I'm here for you, and I want to help you, and I want to make sure that we are successful. And having hard conversations when they are clear and kind, and having a conversation and they feel empowered and they feel like they know what they need to do next and we trust them to do it. Those are relationship building opportunities. If we talk at people instead of with people, we cannot build that relationship. There's a misconception in leadership that you do what I say. Just do it. Do what I say to do. Go do it. I gave you directions already. They were pretty clear. Go take care of it. That's talking at people instead of with them. Those are those pieces that can radically change a team when we acknowledge them as teammates with strengths that are going to help move this project forward. And when a team works together and they're all working together towards a common goal, I'll talk about teamwork in another episode. The synergy that happens, you will get far more done with the same people and the same resources when everyone is there together. They trust each other. They feel like they have the right information, so communicated well. They have courage and they know that they can take courage, that their leader is being courageous. Their leader has a vision. You can get more done. So, have the hard conversation. Check your feedback. Are you being consistent in your feedback? Do they feel like one day they're an amazing employee and the next day they're not? That's inconsistent. What is consistent that you can bring? Lack of transparency. Are you just not telling them because you're like, they don't need to know that? But it wouldn't hurt if they did know it? Where is the lack of transparency where they're filling in the blanks and feeling like they're being lied to? The truth, most leaders don't realize communication is broken until performance starts falling apart. So, being able to stop for a moment, thinking about that communication, giving ourselves a grade as a leader, and seeing what we can do will turn teams around faster because we catch it before it gets to the point where we have people leaving, we have people checking out, and we're retraining teams all of the time. So, what are the warning signs of a communication breakdown? How do we check on these before we get to that point where our team feels like it's in disrepair? The first one is confusion. If you're wondering if people on your team understand the communication that's been given or not, that confusion piece, if there's like, so tell me again why we're doing this, you start getting a lot of questions. People are just frustrated. Maybe some have checked out and they're not talking in the meetings anymore. That's confusion. This shows up with missed deadlines, repeated misunderstanding, coming back and asking for clarity. Hey, I was working on this project and I just wanted to double check on this. Repeated misunderstandings. People unclear about priorities. What is the priority? Is it clear? When does that absolutely have to be done? When do we need it for the team? When do we need it for whatever that might be? So people unclear on priorities. And then constant clarification requests. These are your warning signs that there's confusion. So here's your shift as a leader. If people are constantly needing clarification, your communication may not be as clear as you think it is. And instead of getting upset about this and, like, I'm working on it, or it's okay, what is one thing I can do tomorrow or today to be more clear, to communicate better? But it comes from a position where you're at in your heart. If you're frustrated and angry as you're realizing some of these, that is what's going to come out. And that's not going to help build trust with your team. So, my challenge for you would be if you're noticing these, think about what you truly desire for your team. Because when it comes out of a heart of, I want you all to be successful, therefore, I'm realizing there's some things I need to work on, that vulnerability will help transform your team radically. So, my suggestions when you're working with your team or with someone on your team, ask at the end of a meeting or ask at the end of a task, what feels unclear right now? And give them the opportunity to answer. And if your team has reverted to silence, then ask them, hey, Joe, what feels unclear right now? What else can I provide to help make sure we're all got all the information that we need? What questions do you still have? And then you could even, and I've done this one before too, as I'm going down my list. Okay, so here's what I have. Jake, I have that by next Friday, you're going to have these three pieces done. Is that what you have? That's what I have. Yep. Oh, no. Oh, what do you have? Oh, okay. Yep. Let's clarify that and let's get back on track with that. Okay. Mary, this is what I have. What do you have? Awesome. Okay. What questions do you have, Sally? What questions? And that is vulnerability. You're still being kind. There's no need to get upset. And that will help you as a leader check where you're at with communication. So we said confusion. The next one is silence. Silence is one of the most dangerous signs on a team. Some people are inherently quiet and they just tend to, okay, I'm here, let's do this. But when silence is new and you start seeing arms crossing or disengagement, or we're in a team meeting and they're not involved, something else could be going on. That's not a moment to call them out in front of the team. That's an offline conversation, just checking in, seeing how things are going. If you haven't read Crucial Conversations, I highly suggest it for every leader. There's some really good information out there on different communication frameworks, crucial conversations, talks about unhealthy teams and healthy teams. And unhealthy teams drift in two extremes, silence and violence. And if either of those are showing up in a team meeting or in one-on-ones with your employees or your team members, there's your warning sign that there's a communication barrier. So when we're talking about signs of silence, team members stop contributing because a lot of times they just don't feel safe. Either they're frustrated that they're never listened to, or they get talked over, or someone else dominates the conversation. That's a clue that that person doesn't feel safe to share. Another example might be a team member that just feels like, what does it matter? My opinion doesn't matter. I'm just going to do what I'm told to do and move on. Things to take note of. Is that truly how you want your team to run? Meetings become passive, they just show up and get through the agenda. Employees avoid feedback. That is another sign of silence. So if we're avoiding a conversation, if we're avoiding, because you may be the one that's willing to have a hard conversation, but your employee is not. And if they're frustrated with you, they may not want to tell you. They may feel it'll jeopardize their position. It might jeopardize their position on the team, where they're at. So there's a lot of reasons why people avoid feedback. That's something to think about. If you have an employee who dodges one-on-ones or doesn't want to come in and have that hard conversation with you, you know that the meeting, something happened, they checked out. Be willing to say, "Hey, can we talk about the meeting? What were some of your thoughts?" But make sure it's in a safe environment because that is that trust that's going to build communication opportunities. And then if you are in a meeting and nobody challenges the ideas, I would say think about that one for a second. Sometimes we take that as a win, like, wow, they thought that was a great idea. We're going to move forward with it. We all have different thoughts and personalities and experiences and contributions and knowledge and skill. You should want some questions. You should want some people to ask a little bit more detail and get involved a little more because those are what help bring in that precision when you're working on a project. So, those are your signs of silence. People stop contributing, people become passive, avoiding feedback, and no one's challenging any ideas. So, how do we do that? I talked about a little bit creating a safe environment for them, create that trusting opportunity, those trusting relationships. But that means that you have to be vulnerable as a leader as well. And that doesn't mean you're like, oh my gosh, I'm such a bad leader. No, that means, hey, what's going well? What are some things that I could work on? And if they give you feedback, it's not a defensive, angry outburst. It's okay. All right. Well, thank you for letting me know that. Here's what I'm thinking I'm going to do to improve that or work on that. Does that sound like I'm hearing you right? That it may be this. Those are those safe places. Don't punish disagreement. If someone disagrees with you and you punish them for it, they're not going to talk. That's not safe. It may have happened to you at some point in the past. Don't be the leader who does it to others. Reward honesty. Tell them thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability in that moment. Um, Another way to make the conversation psychologically safe is to listen without immediately defending. So I mentioned that previously. If our first stance is to get defensive, we've already lost the safety and people will not open up. Okay, the third one. So we talked confusion, silence. Your third warning sign is micromanagement. If you start tending to get in there when things aren't getting done, when you feel misunderstood and the micromanagement piece comes out, that's communicating one thing to your team, and that's I don't trust you. Micromanagement Yeah. If you don't trust your team, you're going to micromanage them. If you trust them, you're going to be able to have those conversations and those check-ins, and be able to have an honest, like, where are we at? What do you need to be successful in this? How can I support you? But once that micromanagement comes into place, um, it's not actually leadership. It's it's fear. And we're disguising it as leadership because I'm the boss and I'm responsible for this and I'm the leader. So micromanagement often begins with fear disguised as leadership. And we tend to use that as an excuse to micromanage. So here's some signs of micromanagement. Constant check-ins, like excessive check-ins. What is really needed for that moment? What is really needed to have consistent check-ins that are meaningful and measurable, not every day? Do we need to check in every day on that? Maybe it's a big giant project and your team does need constant updates. But if it's not, think about that. Redoing employees' work. If they're not doing it how you want it done, that's a conversation with them. But if you take their work and redo it, that just screams, I don't trust you. You're not valuable. And they're going to start checking out because they're going to feel like, why are they even here? Why are they doing it? So the quality of work is going to go down. Excessive oversight, if people feel like they can't move, they can't do anything, they can't sneeze without getting questioned, that's not a great place for your employees, and you're going to start seeing turnover. Needing updates on every detail is another one of wanting consistent updates. So, some things to think about to gauge whether or not you're feeling like you're micromanaging. Strong leaders communicate expectations clearly and then empower people to execute. So, here's some things to ask yourself. What happened? Why does it matter? And what happens next. So when you're thinking about this communication pattern and you're thinking about how do I come back to the team and say, you know what? I'm wondering how we're doing with communication, how I'm doing with communication. So let's talk about it. What's been happening? Why is that impactful? Why does it matter? What do we need to do next? This can also be used when we need to talk about something that's changing. Here's what's changing. Here's why it matters. Here's what we're going to do next. Or having a conversation, taking the courage, taking a moment of courage to have that hard conversation with an employee. Let's talk about what happened. Why did that matter? What what needs to be fixed there? And then what do we need to do next? So those are three great questions to ask in any conversation, either with yourself or with a teammate or with a team as a whole. Communication creates clarity, and clarity creates trust. Trust communicates movement. It is very difficult to lead a successful team when communication is not good. So let's think about this for a second. Think about your team, where it's at right now. Maybe it's doing really well. Maybe there's some areas for improvement, but something resonated with you. Let's think about communication. Are your people asking you the same questions repeatedly? Have meetings become quieter or more violent? Are people disengaging instead of contributing? Are you noticing more people taking leave or um, late, leaving early, not engaging with anybody? As a leader, coaching is the best position to be in. Have you replaced that coaching with controlling? So, micromanaging. So, what is the main communication issue for you? What are you tolerating right now because you're avoiding it? Is there a conversation you know you need to have, but you're allowing it to continue because you're avoiding having that conversation? Great leaders don't avoid tension. They lead through it with clarity, empathy, and courage. So, what are some things that you might need to do to bring clarity, have more empathy for your team, and what courage do you need to muster up to make the changes that need to be made? Let's talk about the three big takeaways from today. Communication problems are leader problems. They are your problem first. Teams usually mirror the clarity or confusion that the leader brings. Silence is a warning sign. Disengagement is often unspoken frustration, that quiet quitting piece. Clarity builds trust. People don't need perfect leaders. They need clear leaders. Here's my challenge for you. Schedule one intentional conversation this week. Ask, what's working? What's unclear? What do you need more of from me as a leader? Listen without interrupting and don't get defensive. This is huge for leadership. Sometimes the greatest act of leadership isn't having all of the answers, but it's creating a space where people finally feel safe enough to speak. How's communication going on your team? Keep growing, keep serving, keep shifting. You have everything you need to have those clearer conversations. Take the courage to have a hard conversation and start creating a different environment, a trusting environment, one where your team will grow and flourish. So, your shift, the one small shift, ask yourself what happened, why it matters, what happens next. Keep replaying those three W's: what, why, what. What happened, why it matters, what happens next. And you're going to start to see trust expand in your team, communication become clearer, and your team as a whole are going to start moving in the direction you need it to go to meet those goals that you and your team are working to meet. Thank you for being here for this episode of Shift School, where we unpack how to be more clear in our communication as a leader.